I've been trying to get this video out for a while, but Warner Bros. Keeps copy striking it. So I've had to modify some of the clips a bit, so if any of them look weird, I do apologize. At this point, even the biggest DC fans can admit that a majority of the DCEU movies have been pretty bad. This is because, at their core, these movies have a fundamental problem. They're trying to copy the successful parts of other movies in order to play catch-up, instead of trying to use their incredible cast of characters to uniquely tell their stories. The filmmakers behind the DCEU would rather take elements that made other superhero films successful without considering whether it would work in the context of their story and for their characters. A great example of this is the first DCEU movie, Man of Steel. After the huge success of The Dark Knight, a dark, gritty, and realistic feeling movie, the brains behind Man of Steel thought it would be a good idea to apply the elements that made The Dark Knight successful to their film about Superman, because at the time, that's what they thought the fanbase would want. As you can see the clear flaw of this logic, as The Dark Knight had a dark tone because it directly reflected Batman's character and the story that was being told. Superman, on the other hand, is a completely different character, with a much lighter tone and less realistic considering the nature of Superman having powers. There are plenty of other examples like Harley Quinn's Birds of Prey trying to be Deadpool, or the Justice League trying to copy the Avengers, way before their cast of characters were ready. However, there is hope. If you've read the title of this video, you of course know what I'm talking about, The Suicide Squad. With James Gunn at the helm, DC managed to produce a great movie that stayed true to the tones and personalities of their characters. Let's get the negatives out of the way first, because I just have so many good things to say about this film. The one unavoidable thing that had to be included was the god-awful exposition throughout this film. It's just really not hard to find bad examples of this. The Closer Look has a really good video on this, and I will link it in the description with some great examples of good and bad exposition. So I won't go into too much detail, but I wanted to cover this scene because it was just particularly bad. This guy's entire job is to gather intel for Amanda, and was important enough for her to take with her says this.
Who the fuck is Bloodsport?
He would obviously know who Bloodsport is before he ever got near him, meaning that this line was put in there purely for the audience and makes no sense for the context of the story. A possible fix for this part of the film really wouldn't be too hard. Instead of the prisoner here making a mockery out of Bloodsport, wouldn't it be better if he was nervous around Bloodsport, even though Bloodsport is just keeping his head down, maybe trying to have a casual conversation? The other prisoner flinches and eventually runs away from the conversation in fear. This would make the audience think that whatever crime he committed was so crazy that the other prisoners are still scared of him despite this demeanor. Then, have the exact same scene where Amanda walks in, just without the stupid question and exposition, just start it here where it says,
Dubois.
Same answer as the last time. Piss off. I'm not joining your goddamn Suicide Squad.
Then have the scene of his daughter practically the same, because it actually does a really solid job at setting up his character in a natural way and talks about his father without having to have this line from earlier.
His father was a mercenary who trained his son to kill from the moment he was born.
Then you can also have practically the same pen scene that you already have in the film. So at this point, instead of saying,
Robert Dubois, a world-class marksman. In his hands, anything is a deadly weapon.
they have now shown it in the movie, because this guy is good enough to be able to kill her with a pen and everyone in the room knows it. One of my favorite things about this movie was it seriously captured the fun, violent, and funny vibe of the Suicide Squad. For the first time when I was watching these movies, I really felt like I was watching a comic book. This isn't a knock on other comic book movies, but for this movie, the comic book style really fits in with the characters and the story they're trying to tell. This movie also had a great balance of knowing when to and not to take itself seriously, which has been a huge problem for DC movies in the past. I'm looking at you, Justice League.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
They managed to make the movie have stakes, let you care about the characters, and still have an interesting plot. I seriously did not know where the movie was going to go after each plot point. It just kept me on my toes. Them choosing the R rating for this film was a brilliant decision, as it really fit in with the characters and allowed for the writers to really get creative and explore these characters and their world. The movie added to the film in the little ways and adds a realistic element to it. For example, when Harley Quinn waves down a taxi cab, this scene just had a really real element to it, especially after the extreme violence beforehand. It's just kind of like, yeah, I guess that would happen, as most films would probably just cut away at this point. Or even when Star is released, he doesn't just immediately attack the Suicide Squad. He has no reason to. He doesn't know who they are or what they're there to do yet. And even during the climax where Bloodsport is ordering people around, it's kind of intentionally lame and doesn't really work, because why should it? They didn't have a plan or a clue on how to beat this thing. For me, these little moments just make the characters feel more like people and allow the world to just feel like it really could exist. The visuals in these films were great and helped the film feel like I was watching a comic book. It had amazing visual and color effects. I also loved the phenomenal camera work of this film. Like, for example, the quick zooms and flicks gave me the feeling of going from panel to panel in a comic book. The shot of the fight between Peacemaker and Rick Flag in the helmet was really creative and serves as a great example for the filmmakers' care when making this film. Also, this shot with the flashback in the window looked really cool, even if it was another example of mediocre exposition. Most importantly, all of the visuals fit in and made sense for each character. Amanda's fast pace and concise personality, Harley's fun, big and crazy personality, or Rick Flag and Peacemaker's serious and strong moral compasses. First of all, the team was actually a Suicide Squad. The story felt well-paced and, to my surprise, had a well-thought-out plot that managed to connect the protagonist and antagonist interestingly, as the US had created the threat in Quattro Maltese and Project Scarfish through their own selfishness and lack of caution. The Americans being in the wrong was a great move, as this insinuated that there weren't really good and bad guys in this film, which is really deep for the superhero genre. The story had a lot of fun and unexpected twists that I really enjoyed, and always seemed to fit in with the tones of the film and its character. For example, Peacemaker's betrayal makes sense for his character, as he is incredibly strict on his morals, even though they are questionable ones.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Amanda's motivations also make sense in this situation, as she always wants a contingency and sees how she can take advantage of Peacemaker's morals.
Hey, all that stuff about his daughter, you wouldn't really do that, right?
You don't know half of what I would do, John.
On the second watch, I noticed this joke.
Each member of the team is chosen for his or her own completely unique set of abilities. This is Christopher Smith, known as Peacemaker. In his hands, anything is a deadly weapon. His father was a soldier who trained his son how to kill from the moment he was born.
Are you having a laugh?
What?
You just said each member of the team is chosen for their unique abilities. He does exactly what I do.
Which does two things: foreshadowing the twist and then disguising that foreshadowing amongst all the other jokes within this film. This then explains Peacemaker's unique reason for being on the team, adding also to the character consistency of Amanda. I was so impressed with DC's willingness to go for smaller characters, including the protagonist Bloodsport, who I'd never even heard of before this film. They could have gone with the obvious path and just used Harley and a bunch of well-known villains, but they went for the smaller ones, allowing for them to have some creative freedom with the characters, and also they used this as an opportunity to poke fun at some of the more ridiculous ones. All of the characters felt like they had good motivation. They all reacted to their situations like their characters would, and overall, the character work in this film was handled quite impressively. Although the majority of these characters stayed static, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I thought that it did not extract from the personalities of the secondary characters or make them feel less like people. The characters with arcs were Bloodsport, Amanda, and Polka Dot Man to an extent. As no one wants a segment on Polka Dot Man, Bloodsport had a simple rebirth story. It was subtle, and the storyline started with Amanda at the start of the film, developed throughout the story without characters literally talking about it, and then finished with Amanda at the end of the film.
If we all go free, it never has to see the light of day.
I told you I'd make you a leader, Dubois.
I like how Amanda doesn't really have any respect from those around her. She always needs to yell as they question her actions because she is not a very good leader or communicator. This does a great job of setting up her employees, knocking her out at the end, and taking matters into their own hands. Whilst we are talking about characters, I just really wanted to mention this one scene where Harley shot the president. This scene for me was the moment where I was like, alright, they really understand their characters.
Recently, I made a promise to myself that the next time I got a boyfriend, I'd be on the lookout for red flags, and if I saw any, I would do the healthy thing. And I would murder him.
It was unexpected and showed the development of Harley as a character throughout her films. The DCEU has been painful to watch crash and burn. Their comic book and animated counterparts of these characters are really well written, meaning there is years of character writing being underutilized. That's why I think the Suicide Squad could give the DCEU new life. It's because they've learnt the lesson that when they go out there, try and innovate and do something new, good things will come from it. Overall, I think this is a good step in the right direction for DC and has the potential to be great. For me, at this point, I would actually reset the DCEU, starting with the Suicide Squad and maybe picking and choosing some of the okay origin stories to be canon, like Man of Steel, Aquaman, or Wonder Woman. I would ask that you please fire Ben Affleck and whoever wrote that god-awful version of Batman. I actually have pretty high hopes for the new Batman movie. Maybe he can replace Batfleck? Then I would start to make films that fit with the characters they are adapting. Use patience before assembling your heroes or adding a universe-ending threat. Explore your characters a little so that you actually have something to work with when you go and write those bigger stories. And maybe, just maybe, they might have a good cinematic universe on their hands. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for all the support that you put in my other Marvel video. I had some other videos planned, but because of the success of the other one, I figured why not bring out a DC one and do it a little bit different as well. I'm so excited for this channel to go. I'm just a film student. I'm still learning all about film stuff as well, but it's been great to make videos and hopefully you guys enjoy. Please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.